Gopi-jana-balava Girivaradhari Gopi-jana-balava Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Yashodanandana Rajajanarandana Jamunatira Banachari Jamunatira Banachari Jayaratamara Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Mishipad Panaman Subhari Vijayachaya Sri Sadashi Śrīmad Bhagvatam Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. A reading from Canto 7, Chapter 14, text number 10. Jivaragam na tikrichena vajeta grihamedyapi yata desham yata kalam yava daiva papaditam. Translation. Dogs, fallen, whoops, that's the wrong one, sorry. Even if one is a householder rather than a brahmachari, a sannyasi, or vanaprastha, one should not endeavor very hard for religiosity, economic development, or satisfaction of the senses. Even in householder life, one should be satisfied to maintain body and soul together with whatever is available with minimum endeavor according to place and time by the grace of the Lord. One should not engage oneself in ugra karma. Purport. In human life, there are 4 principles to be fulfilled: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha: religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. First, one should be religious, observing various rules and regulations, and then one must earn some money for maintenance of his family and satisfaction of his senses. The most important ceremony for sense gratification is marriage, because sexual intercourse is one of the principal necessities of the material body. Although sexual intercourse is not a very exalted requisite in life, both animals and men require some sense gratification because of material propensities. One should be satisfied with married life and not expend energy for extra sense gratification or sex life. As for economic development, the responsibility for this should be entrusted mainly to the Vaishyas and Grihastas. Human society should be divided into varnas and ashram: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. Economic development is necessary for Grihastas. Brahmana Grihastas should be satisfied with a life of adhyapan, yajan, and yajan, being learned scholars, teaching others to be scholars, learning how to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, and also teaching others how to worship Lord Vishnu, even the demigods. A Brahmana should do this without remuneration, but he is allowed to accept charity from a person whom he teaches how to be a human being. As for the Kshatriyas, they are supposed to be kings of the land, and land should be distributed to the Vaishyas for agriculture activities, cow protection, and trade. Shudras must work. Sometimes they should engage in occupational duties as cloth manufacturers, weavers, blacksmiths, goldsmiths, brassmiths, and so on, or else they should engage in hard labor to produce food grains. These are the different occupational duties by which men should earn their livelihood, and in this way human society should be simple. At the present moment, however, everyone is engaged in technological advancement, which is described in Bhagavad Gita as ugra karma, extremely severe endeavor. This ugra karma is the cause of agitation within the human mind. Men are engaging in many sinful activities and becoming degraded by opening slaughterhouses, breweries, and cigarette factories, as well as nightclubs and other establishments for sense enjoyment. In this way, they are spoiling their lives. In all of these activities, of course, householders are involved, and therefore it is advised here, with the use of the word api, that even though one is a householder, one should not engage himself in severe hardships. One's means of livelihood should be extremely simple. As for those who are not grihastas, brahmacharis, and vanaprasthas, and sannyasi, they don't have to do anything but strive for advancement in spiritual life. This means that 3/4 of the entire population should stop sense gratification and simply be engaged in advancement of Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Only 1/4 of the population should be grihasta, and that should be according to laws of restricted sense gratification. The grihastas, vanaprasthas, brahmacharis, and sannyasis should endeavor together with their total energy to become Kṛṣṇa conscious. This type of civilization is called Daiva Varnashram. One of the objectives of the Kṛṣṇa conscious movement is to establish this Daiva Varnashram, but not to encourage so-called Varnashram without scientifically organized endeavor of human society. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam langhate girim yakipantamaham bande Shri Guru Dinatavinam Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshumiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So the title of this chapter is called Ideal Family Life. So I guess that's where you got the title for my lecture, because it's the title of the chapter. And since this chapter, and from chapter 11 to 15 in this canto, they all describe Varnashram, and especially this purport, we're going to talk about how Grihasta life is related to Varnashram and how to act in society as a Grihasta, social principles. We're not going to get into the details of Grihasta life, but we're going to talk about the principle of Grihastha life, which is social, which is in relationship to the greater society. So there are three principles of Varnashram, which are related to Grihasthas. First of all, the Varnashram is based on a culture of respect, a culture of love and trust, which Srila Prabhupada very much wanted. In fact, when Srila Prabhupada left just before he left his body, he told His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj that I want to see how everyone is cooperating together, and I want to establish the Varnashram system. So it goes together. It goes together. Now the second principle is everyone must be Krishna conscious. It's based on pleasing Krishna. Varnashram is based on love for Krishna. The Bhagvatam, first canto, second verse, second chapter, verse 13 says, Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. You should do your Varnashram, but the goal is to please the Supreme Lord Hari. So the second principle, first one, culture of respect, love, and trust. Second, you must be Krishna conscious. And third, for the Grihasthas, charity. That is the duty of the Grihasthas, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, of course, nowadays we don't see much love and respect between the different Varnas. Especially we can see it in America. They don't love the president very much. Many people. In the previous ages, in the fourth canto, I don't know, that was some years ago when you read fourth canto, it was talking about Pritam Maharaj. And he was explaining to his citizens, if you love me, if you care about me and what happens to me after my death, you will do your Varnashram duties and always think of Krishna. That was his instruction to his citizens. So, of course, so why did they do their duties in Varnashram? Because they loved him. They loved Prithu. They loved the king. There was love between the king and the citizens and the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas would go door to door and give free Ayurvedic medicine. They were the doctors, and they would give free astrological advice. Of course, they would accept charity, as Prabhupada says in this purport, that the Brahmanas can accept charity. But so there's four principles here mentioned: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And Prabhupada says Artha, economic development, is most important for Grihasthas. And what does this mean is that the Grihasthas must maintain the other three ashrams. The brahmacharis, sannyasis, and vanaprastha are to be maintained by the Grihasthas because they don't do anything. They're not supposed to work or do anything to maintain themselves. So, but at the same time, even though the most important principle for Grihasthas is charity, all the four ashramas must engage in charity. In fact, Gita says in 18th chapter, verse 5, that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. They purify even the great souls. So charity is for purification of the heart, Prabhupada says in the purport. And if you give it to suitable persons, it will help you to advance in spiritual life. So if you're a Brahmana Grihastha, here this purport tells you that you should teach, you should be a teacher. You teach about the scriptures, you teach about deity worship, and you can accept charity and give charity also. You're giving your knowledge, you're giving your Ayurveda, you're giving your astrological consultation. So in the Kshatriyas, they give land, and the Vaishyas give products, wealth and products. They give charity. Shudras give their labor. But Ugra Karma, so here it's advised, don't do Ugra Karma for Grihasthas. And Prabhupada mentions breaking the four regulative principles. In the early days, sometimes devotees would work in a cigarette factory. And then Prabhupada told them, no, don't do that. They didn't know better. One of my godbrothers, Bachari, he was working in a steel factory at night. And he told Prabhupada, I almost had a nervous breakdown. Prabhupada said, yes, factory is another name for hell. Factory is another name for hell. You work in a factory, you're in hell, actually. So he said, yes, why you had almost a nervous breakdown? Because in your last life, you were all brahmanas, and now we're back here together again. So that was really nice of Prabhupada to say that. And he wanted Daiva Varnashram. He wanted it. So Prabhupada also explains one verse in Bhagavad Gita, 9:27, Yat karoshi arashnashiya juhosi dadasya yatapashya sikonteya takurusha mararpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you give in charity, whatever penances you undergo should be done in Kṛṣṇa consciousness to the satisfaction of Kṛṣṇa. So, and the varnas and the ashrams were dependent on each other. The citizens were depending for protection and instruction on the king. The king was depending on the citizens for being Kṛṣṇa conscious and following varnashram, because the king gets 1/6 of the karma of the citizens, and the good and bad. So just imagine what's going to happen to our the people in charge of the governments today. So what's the difference? There are two types of varnashram. One is demonic varnashram, asuric, and one is daiva varnashram. And what's the difference? The difference is connection to Kṛṣṇa. The asuric varnashram, everything is based on birth, and the daiva varnashram, everything is based on qualification, adhikar, your qualification, your karma, and your qualities. So the arms, at the beginning of creation, the different varnas and ashrams were different parts of the body. The brahmanas were the head, the kshatriyas were the arms, the vaishyas the belly, and shudras the legs. So just like the arms depend on the eyes and the brain, so the kshatriyas depended on the brahmanas for vision. So it's very important to have the vision of the brahmanas. And without, of course, the most important thing is that you're Kṛṣṇa conscious. Without Kṛṣṇa, the body is powerless. Kṛṣṇa is the life of the body. And if the different varnas try to be independent, then they will suffer. Prabhupada gives the example of the hands going on strike. One day the hands decided, why should we feed the stomach? We should enjoy ourselves. So they take the food, and the hands were just touching them and squeezing them. But what happened was the body started to suffer. And then they thought, we better feed the stomach, yes. And that is important. So one time in London, the doctors went on strike, and for 1 month. And after 1 month, they saw the death percentage decreased since the doctors went on strike. Anyway, we can see what happens when the grihastas, when they fight with each other and they don't feed the whole body. So Yudhisthira, when he was king, not only the citizens cooperated, even the rivers, oceans, hills, mountains, forests, creepers, and active drugs, they paid taxes too. The hills would give minerals, the rivers would give pure water, and the forests would give fruits and flowers. They would all give something. So Prabhupada explains everything in creation has a service to perform in the universal form. Every herb, every seed, every blade of grass have a service. And when there's a Kṛṣṇa conscious king, everything will be in harmony. So we can control nature. Actually, now it's out of control. We see that nature is striking back. So many problems now in the world. I think there was a hurricane in Louisiana. We see the pictures. So nature is striking back. But Srila Prabhupada explains how we can control nature if we become obedient, submissive, surrender to Kṛṣṇa. There will be no more natural disturbances. So in the same way that all the herbs had a service, the varnas had a service to Kṛṣṇa, and they would appreciate each other. So culture, respect Just like Prabhupada said, to greet a Brahmana, you would say Pandita Maharaj, a Kshatriya, Thakurji, and a merchant, a Vaishya Sethji, a laborer, Chaudhary, means leader. So everyone has a respectable way of worship. And so as Grihastas, you have to be able to greet everybody appropriately. So we can study the scriptures and understand how an ideal Grihasta will greet different people. Maharaj Dasharath was a king, and he was receiving a Brahmana, Vishvamitra. And he said, Ahishtam yatta punarjama jayaya. How are you doing in your endeavor to conquer the repetition of birth and death? So that's how you greet a Brahmin. How is your japa? How are you advancing in Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada said a Brahmin does not go to construct a big house. He simply constructs his character. And the others, they say, please come here, sit down. So the Kshatriyas, how to greet a Kshatriya, in 6th canto, 14th chapter, verse 17, the great sage Angira came to visit King Chitraketu. And he said, I hope your body and your mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. So body, mind, and kingdom. So the verse says, the king is always protected by 7 elements. His guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends. So how's your defense? How's your treasury? These are the questions. Of course, we probably won't ever meet a king, but just in case you do. How do you meet a Vaishya? So this is Vaishya who is doing farming. Probably if you were to meet a regular Vaishya, you'd just say, how's business? But in one who's a farmer, and this is shown in Bhagvatam again, Vasudeva, father of Kṛṣṇa, was meeting Nanda. And he said, please tell me about the welfare of Vrindavan. You have many animals. Are they happy? Are they getting enough grass and water? And let me know whether the place where you're now living is undisturbed and peaceful. So it was his duty to protect Nanda, and the duty of the Vaishyas to give protection to the cows. So then how to greet a Shudra? How are you? Because everything we are thinking, most Shudras think they are this body. In Kali Yuga, everyone's born a Shudra. Hopefully, as devotees, we have gone beyond that, and we can say, how is your devotional service going? Jayapataka Maharaj, when his disciples would tell me, how does he greet them? How's your preaching? How's your preaching going? Because he wants his disciples to preach. So that's how he would greet his disciples. So Panditji, that was the term. Prabhupada used that term for Pradyumna, his Sanskrit scholar. And Shuddhakirti tells that when I was first with Prabhupada, he sometimes rang his bell. And when I entered the room, he would ask, where is Panditji? So then after several months, his Sanskrit editor was not always readily available. And Prabhupada would call me to his room and ask, where is Banditji? Instead of Pandit, it was Bandit. So that's Prabhupada. So Radhanath Swami, when he was asked, how are you? His answer was, better than I deserve. And so that is very interesting, how Vaishnavas reply to this. So if we get a Shudra on top of government, then sense gratification is the goal. When in the 1950s, there was a president during his campaign in the 50s, he promised, I will give 2 cars in every garage and a chicken in every pot. That was his campaign promise. That was karma, sense gratification. If a Vaishya is in control of the government, then money will be artha. Artha will be the most important thing. If you get a Kshatriya, justice, dharma will be the goal. And if you get a Brahmana in the charge, then righteousness, spirituality. But all are needed. We need all of the different ashrams and varnas. So just like Prithu Maharaj was depending on the citizens for his spiritual advancement after life. Prabhupada was depending on his disciples, he said. In Bhagavatam 4th Canto, we see how Dhruva took his mother back to Godhead. So Prabhupada wrote in the purport, the Kṛṣṇa consciousness movement is spreading now all over the world. And sometimes I think that even though I am crippled in many ways, if one of my disciples becomes as strong as Dhruva Maharaj, then he will be able to carry me with him to Vaikuntha Loka. So that was Prabhupada's humility. So in this purport, Prabhupada describes Daiva Varnashram, that the Grahastas, Vanaprastha, Brahmachari, and Sannyasi should endeavor together with their total energy to become Krishna conscious. So the Daiva Varnashram is to elevate everyone to the topmost level of Vaishnava. Now, when I came to India, when I first came in 1972, we had some caste brahmanas were favorable, but how they were favorable, they said, you're doing such a nice puja. Next life you can be born as a brahmana and advance. So Prabhupada said, tell them, you're doing such a nice puja. Next life you can take birth in ISKCON and go back to Godhead. So we have to take, Grihastas have to take very good care of the children because they are Vaikuntha children, Prabhupada said. When I was also living in India, in Goa, I used to drive a moped, and the person who serviced my moped was a Brahmana. He had a Brahmin's head, but he was covered with grease head to foot. And people would call him Panditji, It's like, Panditji, can you change the oil? Can you fix my moped? Anyway, so that's going on. It's not it's important to see what is your work. So in the 4th Canto, 25th chapter, it's described that any king who does not teach his citizens about their duties in terms of varna ashram, but simply takes taxes, is liable to suffer for the impious activities performed by the citizens. So now, one very interesting thing is dharma. Dharma, there are 4 pillars of dharma, 4 pillars of religion: cleanliness, mercy, austerity, and truthfulness. This is according to Canto 1, Chapter 17. But in Canto 3, Chapter 12, it's described in a little different way. Instead of saying cleanliness, it says education. Instead of saying mercy, it says charity. And austerity and truthfulness are the same. 4 legs of religion. But there's a verse, 3:12:41, which explains that these 4 pillars of religion are upheld by the 4 ashramas. The brahmacharis are supposed to uphold the pillar of education or cleanliness. The grihastas are supposed to uphold the pillar of daya, mercy, or charity, dana. Dana. In 3rd Canto, it's described dana instead of daya. The vanaprasthas, tapa, penance, and the sannyasis, satya, or truth. So the grihastas are meant to uphold the pillar of religion of charity or mercy. Mercy, that's how you can be merciful. So how do you know where you belong? Truthfulness was actually also a very important qualification of the brahmanas. But Prabhupada tells a story of Satyakama Jabala. He came to Gautam Muni and asked for initiation. And Gautam Muni said, "Who's your father?" And the boy said, "I don't know." He said, "Okay, go ask your mother." And so he asked his mother. His mother said, "My dear son, I don't know who is your father." So he went back to Gautam Muni and said, "Sir, my mother also doesn't know who is my father." And Gautam Muni said, "Yes, you are a Brahmana because you're speaking the truth." So unless you're a son of a Brahmin, you cannot speak such secret truth. Nobody will say, "I don't know who is my father." You're telling the truth. So first qualification is satya for a Brahmana. And in India also there was one case of one man who was similar. He was in jail, and he was kind of a street boy, and he got a Back to Godhead magazine, saw a picture of Prabhupada, and he saw a very expensive watch on Prabhupada's arm, and he said, "Oh, I must go and steal that watch." So he came to the temple and said, "I want to meet your guru, Prabhupada." They said, "Oh, yes, he's in South India. You can go there." He went to South India. He met Prabhupada. Prabhupada took off his watch and said, "You want this?" And he said, No, that's okay, Guruji." And so he got purified. But then later on, Prabhupada wanted to send him to the West, because in the 70s especially, it was a dream of many Indians to go to the West. And so Prabhupada wanted to go and preach in the West. So he had to get a passport, but he had trouble getting his passport. So Prabhupada said, why aren't you going to preach? And he said, "Well, on my passport, I'm supposed to tell who's my father, and I don't know who's my father." And Prabhupada said, "Okay, show me your passport." And Prabhupada wrote under father, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, father. So he went to the West. And so, yes, Prabhupada is our father. We're all one family. We're all in the Achyuta Gotra, most of us. So we need to serve Srila Prabhupada and stay under his protection. Now, in the 5th canto, there is a very similar verse, which will shed some light on this verse. It's spoken by Rishabdev to his 100 sons. Most of them are going to become grihastas. I think 83 of them out of 100. Nine are going to be yogis, and maybe 91 will be grihastas. Some will be brahmanas. Most of them will be brahmanas. Some will be kshatriyas, and some will be yogis, the Nava-yogendras. So there's the 5th canto, chapter 5, verse 3. Is a very interesting verse, which is similar to what we're hearing now. And I think maybe the verse before, I like similar verses, maybe the verse after in this chapter. So I'm going to read that verse to you now. And this is going to explain really ideal Grihastha life. Those who are interested in reviving Krishna consciousness and increasing their love of Godhead do not like to do anything that is not related to Krishna. They are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders, nor are they attached to wives, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. So Srila Prabhupada gives a lecture on this verse, nice lecture. So I'll bring some points from that lecture. And the first question Prabhupada asks is, can a Grihastha be a Mahatma? And the answer is yes. Now Prabhupada gives the example, Advaita Acharya, Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda, they were all Grihasthas. Shivas. Lord Chaitanya married twice. Nityananda had a child, Virabhadra. Advaita had many children. Shivas had many children. And of course, we know the story of Shivas. One time, during the kirtan, Lord Chaitanya was having kirtan. So here's an example of this verse. And his son Gopal died during the kirtan, not in the kirtan, but in the back room. And all the ladies were crying, and Shivas went there and said, "Don't make any fuss, we're having kirtan, we don't want to disturb the kirtan." And then he went back to kirtan, and Lord Chaitanya, but he understood, he's omniscient. And he said, "Shivas, something happened in your house." And Shivas said, "Yeah, my son died." And Lord Chaitanya said, "See, your son died, and you're here in the kirtan." And so he went and he brought the child back to life, and the child spoke that, I've had so many births, and now I'm going to my next life. And so everyone was pacified. But that was Shiva's. He was not attached, although he was a grihasta. So that's a wonderful example. So Lord Chaitanya Prabhupada does not say you have to be a sannyasi to become a Mahatma. We don't propagate such an idea, Prabhupada says. At least I'm not doing that. I'm creating householders, ideal householders. And my ideas are being fruitful. Here in London, I sent 6 householders. They are doing nice. Sincerely, they are working. So I'm very proud. He said, my guru, Bhakti Siddhanta, sent brahmacharis and sannyasis. I'm sending grihastas to preach. And that was what we had to do. And when we first joined, we were grihasta. And after a year of training, they just kick you out the door. Okay, go start a temple. No money. We just go somewhere. In fact, we went to Jacksonville. But we only lasted 6 months, but we tried. We tried. Yeah, in Jacksonville, Florida, in 70-something, 71, I think it was. And now they have a temple, I think. So what is the example? Pandavas are another example of Grihasta Mahatmas. Yudhisthira was the head, Kunti was the mother of the Mahatmas. And the lessons of Gita and Puranas are connected with the history of the Pandava Mahatmas. Arjuna was selected as the hero of Bhagavad Gita. And Arjuna's grandson, Maharaj Parikshit, was selected as the hero of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. So there was a family of Mahatmas. So you don't have to be a sannyasi. So what are the grihastas? What are the symptoms? They're described in this verse. His only desire is to please Kṛṣṇa, first qualification. And how do they deal with others? Sannyasis may live alone in forest or Himalayas, secluded place in Vrindavan, but grihasta has to deal with ordinary persons, businessmen. But if he's a Mahatma, he only wants to satisfy Kṛṣṇa. Not interested in all that society. It's not pleasing to him. So they deal only as much as required. They don't have intimate relationships with non-devotees, but deal with them as necessary. Society, friendship, and love are required. But a Mahatma is looking for friendship with Kṛṣṇa, Krishna's devotees. And he knows if Krishna is my friend, then everything will be good. So Arjuna, he accepted Kṛṣṇa as his friend, and he won the battle of Kurukshetra. So they want Krishna's friendship, this verse says, Mai Sahidartha. And that's why Krishna said, because you are my friend, I'm instructing Bhagavad Gita to you. He was not a sannyasi. He was a grihasta. He was a kshatriya, not a learned scholar. Bhaktosime, that's why. He said, because you're my devotee, I am selecting you. So in Kali Yuga, it's difficult to be a sannyasi. We're seeing that in our movement. It's so Lord Chaitanya, he spoke, and this is a verse in 10th. He quoted the verse from Lord Brahma, 10:14:3. Stay in your position, whatever you are, but become a Mahatma, become a great soul. So how to become a Mahatma? That is what we're doing here. We don't speculate. We hear from Srila Prabhupada. We hear the books, and with a humble and meek attitude, understand from Srila Prabhupada about God, about Kṛṣṇa. And the verse says, and you will conquer him one day. You will conquer Kṛṣṇa. Narottam Das Thakur says, Grihe Bhavaneti Take, Hagoranga Bole Dake. You stay home or outside, just chant. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda, and Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And your heart will be purified. And so there's 2 kinds of Mahatma. There is the one in the renounced order, preaching all over the world, and the grihasta. He can preach amongst his relatives, children, friends. So you still preach, whether you're grihasta or if you're sannyasi. Srila Prabhupada, it's described, when he was a grihasta, he used to receive brahmacharis any hour of the night. And he didn't even have deities, he just had pictures. So, but he would take care if anybody would visit him. So what about your own family? What about your children? Well, you have to you have to take care. You have to take care of your children also. That's very important. Grihastas, they have their family, they have their business. They have to meet so many outside people, but that is not their priorities, not what they're interested. They prefer to be with devotees, to hear Bhagavatam, to worship Krishna. Most people, that is their life, just their job, their business. So Shastra says, Tasaiva heto prayate kovido, that the happiness will come, just like the distress will come. Everything will come. You don't need to work very hard. As the purport says, don't do hardships in your business, but try to give something, give in charity to Krishna. So let's see. Now, I would also like to, here's something Prabhupada says. I was hearing that also from Srila Prabhupada this morning, because he was talking, today's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day, and he was saying how Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a grihasta. He had like 10 children, and he had to work. He worked 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon as a magistrate. It's not like he just, of course, when he was old, he renounced. But most of his life he was working. But he was not attached to his job. When they wanted to, the government wanted to give him special honors, special privileges, he refused. He said, no, that will get in the way of my preaching. So I won't want the special honors. And so that's another example of ideal grihasta life. So not only sannyasis should be guru. If you know Krishna, then if you know Krishna, the science of Krishna, you can be guru. So there's another quote. Let's see, I have from Prabhupada's lecture in New York City, 1966. Now, who was he preaching to in 1966? A handful of people who just, he got off the street, or they were like hippies type. And what is he saying to them? Right in the very beginning, it's like a Gita class in chapter 4, which must have been in April or May of 1966. What did he tell them? You must become guru. That's what he told them. And he said, Lord Chaitanya says, nobody is responsible for his birth. His responsibility is to advance in Krishna consciousness. If you want to enter the kingdom of God or be Krishna conscious, there's no impediment. It does not depend on any material condition. It is open for everyone. And he quoted Bhagavad Gita 4:13, Guna Karma Vibhakasha, that the varnashram is created according to guna and karma, quality and work. The chance is given. You can become a brahmana. You can become a great devotee of Krishna. You can become a spiritual master of the whole world. So that was Srila Prabhupada, how he empowered us. He empowered us to be guru. He empowered us to be preachers, to spread Krishna consciousness. And that is the legacy we have from Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's message is that if you're a grihasta, okay, no problem, you can also preach. So this is what I would like to say today. If there's any questions at this point, we can open for questions.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for sharing such wonderful aspects of Devi Varnashrama and how to deal with different kinds of devotees, and sharing from Prabhupada's example and so many pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. We are so grateful for all those wonderful stories and the philosophy behind it. So if you have any question, please raise your hand, or if you have any comment. At this point, we have about 25 devotees on call. If you have any question or comment, you can raise your hand. Yes, Vamsi Vilas Prabhu, please.
Hare Kṛṣṇa, Narayani Mataji, wonderful class. I have a question regarding Ugra Karma. So we know in this world there are many people who are endeavoring like for scientific progress, and we ourselves are trying to use science in serving the Lord. So if we say that they shouldn't endeavor, then we may not have all this technology for us to utilize in Krishna's service. So aren't they also doing service to Krishna, and shouldn't we respect those who want to do that for the advancement, like technological advancement, putting satellites so that we can all get connected? And also Krishna is the one who's giving them the knowledge and the discoveries that they're making. He's giving the power to them. So so can we say that they shouldn't endeavor, or or are we saying that they should not over endeavor, but they should also take Krishna consciousness up, and they can still do their discoveries? So I'm just trying to reconcile what is happening in the world today and what is the best course forward. Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada, he was not against technology. He was flying in the airplane. He was using the microphone, the tape recorder, everything. He was using it. But what he was against was the demonic attitude, at how they are using the technology. If you look at the, mostly a lot of it, the greatest percentage of the technology is being used for weapons. If you see how America is spending their money, it's like, I don't know, I saw some figures, it's like 30 times or 300 times for defense than what they use for welfare of the citizens. So Srila Prabhupada, he was very happy with his Sarup Damodar, his scientist devotee. And how he wrote a book, Scientific Basis of Krishna Consciousness. And so he was, Yuta Karma is also has been doing the same kind of work. That he helping the scientists to be God conscious. If they're God conscious, then they will properly use the technology to help people, uplift the people. Instead of, so that was Prabhupada was against, and how they're using the technology to degrade people. And we see that if we look at the percentage of how this technology is being used, how the internet is being used, I would say the majority is to degrade the people. There are very few. I mean, devotees are there online. We're using it. But of course, even one time, one Indian man asked Prabhupada, what if we didn't have cars? And Prabhupada said, yeah, bullock carts. You could use bullock carts. But then things would have to change dramatically, like they used to be. Like even like I live in Vrindavan, and you don't need a car. Everything is there. Doctors, medicine shops, food, clothes, everything is there. You can walk. And that's how it used to be. That's how it used to be. That everything, you could just, everything was in walking distance, and your business and people who are doing work, it's all there. They can just walk, they can just, whatever. So yeah, so now the society is concentrated in big cities. So therefore, there is a need for all these things. And there's airplanes, so they need all the computers and the satellites and everything. You need it for the TV, you need it for the airplanes. Yeah, but if like all the TV stations were Krishna conscious, then I'm sure Prabhupada would be very happy with the technology. Right now, what percentage is there of the TV, of the internet, that's Krishna conscious? So like this world is not bad. It can be if you use it for Krishna. That's the whole philosophy. But the problem is living in this world, you might get affected by so much negativity, especially in Kali Yuga, how it's being used negatively. Okay, any other?
Thank you, Mataji.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Yes, I see Bhaswati Mataji has raised her hand. Yes, Mataji, please.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Very nice lecture. Mataji, I have two questions. First one is, as you said that no one loves our president or no one loves the king. So in this present scenario, in this Kali Yuga, as we do not have a Kṛṣṇa conscious king or like that, the infrastructure, so is basically the spiritual master is the spiritual king and guru, everything, right, Mataji?
Yeah, the spiritual master is, but you also have the GBC, you have everything together. Now we have the Sabha, so there's checks and balances. So Guru is not exactly everything. We have three things that are together: Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So those three things are equally important, because if you say Guru is everything, we see what happened in ISKCON. Guru is everything, but then the Guru leaves. And what happens if Guru is everything? Then you also leave. No, we have also other sadhus. Sadhus is ISKCON, GBC, senior devotees, other devotees. That's really, really important to have. So we have the Guru, we have the devotees, and we have the books, we have the Shastra. So all three are equally important. All three are equal. It's a spiritual structure. It's not a material. Of course, in a material way, Prabhupada has given the temples. So if you are living in the temple, then you have to see the president as also like, the manager of the temple. And you have to, follow that. Of course, there's the Guru, and then they go together, the Guru and the temple presidents. And they should agree with each other and help each other. They should complement each other, the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas. So, yeah, okay. Other question?
Mataji, another question is if a devotee has a right to decide that whether he or she will do the civil duty, means like, as for example, I'm saying like voting rights and stuff. If can she skip that part if she or he wants to do it, like more focused on the devotional service, not more in the politics, like as you were telling about the citizens and their duties. So in this respect, in the present scenario, like can a devotee skip that duties, like civil duties?
Yeah, this is freedom of choice. You're an American citizen. You have your freedom to decide whether you want to do that or not. It's not exactly related to devotional service, but that's as an American citizen, of course, the government will want you to vote. But I think, if I can remember correctly, Prabhupada did, yes, he said that, it's not good to vote for someone who is not Krishna conscious. So like Tulsi Gabbard, she was running. If she was a candidate, all the devotees should vote, because, and here in Alachua, our temple president has requested devotees to vote because for the council, there's one member of the council has stopped all the devotee activities. And there's another one going who is a friend of the devotees. So she said, well, you should go and vote for this one because she will help us and she will allow us to do our projects. Whereas now it's being stopped by this other person. And so I heard that request from the temple president here in Alachua. So in that case, it seems that you should vote. Yeah.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. I think maybe one last question. Nandini Kishori Mataji has her hand raised. Please, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Narayani Prabhu, Hare Krishna devotees. So I really like simplicity of your lecture and yet such an intriguing, thoughtful content. It's a very nice balance. My question is, you said we asked Brahmana how is preaching. We asked Vaishyas, how is your business or farming? You asked Shudra, how are you? But I forget what you said about Kshatriya.
Yeah, how's your kingdom? How's your treasury? How's your defense? How's your ministers? There's a verse from 6th canto. I don't know if I could find it now though. Yeah, there's a verse from 6th canto, I can't remember, 14th chapter, I think verse 17. Let me look at here, where it's shown how you greet a Kshatriya. What did I hit the wrong button, you know? That always happens on computers. Okay, I'm looking for it. Hold on. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay. Page up. Okay, hold on. Oh, yeah. Okay, here. Now I'm getting close. So, Vaishya Kshatriya 6, 14, 17. That will answer that question. Yeah, it says, I hope your body, your mind, your royal associates, and paraphernalia are well. That was what he said. Oh, I can't hear you. Are you muted? I think
Sorry.
you're muted.
And just one more question. Actually, Shubhala's going through really encouraging everybody to give a class. So I was wondering if you have any tips for the novice people, how to give. You gave such a nice class, and Shubhala's going through also.
Well, you should pray. First of all, you should pray before you give class. Pray a lot. Then read the verse and purport and see if any ideas come, and jot those ideas down. And then check if Prabhupada's lectures on that chapter and see and you get an overall idea of what it's about. Because I rely a lot on Prabhupada's lectures. I rely a lot on that. So you really get a Prabhupada's angle, his commentaries on the verses. Okay. Where are you? In Alachua, no? No.
Yes. We crossed each other at the Springs for 2 minutes, and I met you in the temple too. Yes, I'm in Alachua. True.
Oh, okay. I thought so. Okay.
Thank you so much. One question I have, Mataji, is like, these things are in the like ideal situation, like Ritu Maharaj and Dashrath Maharaj and Yudhishthir Maharaj, and at this point it is all hodgepodge.
Exactly.
So what should be our mood? Because at sometimes the same person is doing deity worship in the altar, and then that person could be cooking in the kitchen, and at some point that person could be cleaning the toilet and then going to his job as well, or his business. So what's the message for the contemporary situation in this day and age?
Well, Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter to His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj when he was a Grihastha. Maharaj asked him, I have a job, and he asked a very similar question. He says, so how am I to be? Am I a Shudra? Because I get a salary. Because in Bhagavatam it says if you get a salary, you're a Shudra. And so Prabhupada said, no, a Vaishnava is never a Shudra. A Vaishnava is always beyond, because you're working for Kṛṣṇa. So if you go to the Grihastha Vision team, they explain all these details, like they tell you how to budget yourself, how different things, how you should spend your money. They give you very nice ideas, and they said you should give at least 5 to 15% in charity for the spreading of Krishna consciousness. Of course, if you have your own namhata, that would be good. But Srila Prabhupada said a Vaishnava is never a Shudra, and you are working for Krishna. So Prabhupada said Vaishnava is above this varnashram. So we can use the varnashram just like we can use technology for Krishna consciousness. But at the same time, the Vaishnava is beyond that. So in Kali Yuga, Prabhupada just made us all Vaishnavas without worrying about the varnashram. That's why he didn't do it. He just said, okay, just chant Hare Krishna. He just wanted to elevate all of us. And then he did encourage us to follow our natural propensities at the same time. Whatever work we were doing, we should continue. Satsarupa and Brahmananda were working and giving the money to Prabhupada. And so, yeah, he encouraged us to keep our jobs. He didn't encourage us to leave everything. He encouraged us about to be Krishna conscious. The main thing is to always remember Krishna and all the other rules and regulations. And Varnashram is not higher than bhakti, is higher than Varnashram. So if you're engaged in bhakti, if you're doing Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, then that is your constitutional position. And so if you read chapter 9, I think verse 30 or 31, the Prabhupada explains we have two different duties. One is the constitutional, the spiritual, and the other is the material. So as long as we're in this material world, we have to do both. We have to do both. But because we are Vaishnavas, if we are chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 principles, and chanting our Gayatri if we're second initiated, then we are in the transcendental position, and we are Vaishnavas. We are considered on the transcendental platform, and even if we clean the toilet or if we do other things, then that's subordinate to our main focus. Subordinate to our main focus.
Thank you so much for this wonderful response. Anything else, dear Vaishnavas, before we stop? Okay. So I would encourage everyone to please reveal your lotus face so we can express gratitude to Mataji by, you can turn on your videos and audios so you can share your gratitude. And even during the class also, I would encourage everyone to please keep your video on. It really helps everyone and to be more personal. Okay, so we will express our deepest gratitude to Her Grace Narayani Mataji for such wonderful class on Varnashrama and Devi Varnashrama Dharma and sharing such wonderful pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. We will express gratitude by loudly saying Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Prabhupada ki jai, Grace Narayani Mataji ki jai, Grantara Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much.
Dhanyavad.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thanks, Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all the devotees as well for joining. Hare Krishna. We'll continue tomorrow with the next verse.